Well, a happy Tuesday, September 17th, 2019. Today we are you just completed 20 minutes of Khan Academy, so good job. Hopefully you're leveling up at this point, and we're going to now do the lesson that you will need to take notes on. You need to be in your book. Right now is a good time to get it. You want to be on page 371. We are also going to peek at page 366 here and add a couple vocabulary terms. We have a big bunch of vocabulary in this part of the unit. We're going to move on to the essential questions 3 and 4, and we're going to start talking a lot about angles. So Unit 1, Lesson 9 is about lines. We have 3 more lessons in this unit, and then we're going to have the unit test, which will be transformations and all these angle relationships. So again, we're talking about lines here, a straight line, and we'll draw one in a second. If you have any tools that you've bought this school year, a compass, a straight edge would be a ruler, and a protractor, you want to be bringing those to class now is the time. Lesson objective. You will classify angles. Classify is to name them appropriately, and angle relationships created when a transversal line, that's a line that crosses something, crosses, and in this case, parallel lines. So we're going to look what those look like a train track and a road crossing it. And use those relationships to find missing angles. So if there's certain properties that they have, and they create, and so we can use those properties to find angles that might be missing in a different location. You can always pause the video at any time to complete these notes and go back to them. Okay, we have 2 brand new essential questions. Essential question 3 is not going to be addressed today. How are angle relationships useful inside of a triangle? So when you're comparing angles associated with a triangle, we're going to spend a lot in the next 2 lessons on that. Today we're on essential question number 4. How are angle relationships useful when we compare angles found with parallel lines? Again, parallel lines are 2 lines that don't cross, and then they're cut by a transversal line. A transversal line, again, is a line that crosses something. So let's move to the book, and we have some vocabulary. So lesson 1 in chapter 5 is lines. You'll find that on page 371 in your book, where it says lines. Scan the lesson and predict 2 things you're going to learn about parallel lines. A quick, easy way to find the essential is to look at the key concepts, transversals and angles, and your example ones, and your other red markings, red sections are the main ideas, finding missing angle measures. Again, transversals and angles. So it's on page 372. And finding missing angles. It's going to be on page 373. That's how you do a quick scan. In elementary school, we used to call it a picture walk. And you get a new book and you take a little picture walk. Well, you could do the same thing in a math textbook or any textbook. So go ahead and go back 1, 2 pages. You're going to see a cartoonish thing. And you're going to see a huge bank of vocabulary words in here. And we have a lot of vocabulary. There's some that we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to have you highlight them. We're going to talk about alternate exterior angles, alternate interior angles, alternate being a different side of a line. We're not doing converse, corresponding angles, we will. Exterior angles, interior angles, parallel lines, perpendicular lines, We've discussed a polygon in the last lesson. Proof, Pythagorean theorem, regular polygon, remote interior angles, transversal. And let's add a couple words in here that are going to be very, very important to our lesson. Supplementary angles. Those are two angles that add up to 180 degrees. Sum to 180 degrees. And the other are vertical angles. So add those two to your vocabulary bank and highlight them. And go ahead and turn back forward 2 pages to our lesson 1. This is Unit 1, Lesson 9. Remember, we've changed the order of the way we're presenting things in Madeira, so let's stay on track that we are still in Unit 1. Okay, your vocabulary is also identified right here. So perpendicular lines, we already highlighted them. Parallel lines, transversal, interior angles, exterior angles, alternate interior, alternate exterior, and corresponding. Again, it's missing some very important ones. Supplementary and vertical. These are both angles. The sign for an angle is kind of looks like an L. Okay, we have some extra cool math symbols that we're going to learn. 2 lines next to each other, parallel to. A straight line that's a vertical line and a horizontal line at the very bottom is perpendicular. Perpendicular means like a T. As you can tell, that's a capital upside down T. That makes a perpendicular. A lot of letters in the alphabet make perpendiculars. There's a lot of parts of letters like capital M where the 2 outsides are parallel. So you have a lot of letters in the alphabet that are capital that do these things. Lowercase too. And there you can see a little M in front. Now we're talking about the measure. So we add this M in the front, the measure of angle 1, and you can see there's the symbol for angle 1 again. But now we're talking about an actual measure. It measures typically an angle anywhere from between 0, the measure is between 0 and 180 degrees. Once you go past 180 degrees on an angle measure, you are dealing with a straight line. Okay. Let's take a look here in our book. We have the vocabulary listed out all again here, and we have some very, very important pieces. The most important piece whenever you're dealing with with parallel lines, the very first thing you want to do is identify the parallel lines. You want to get a red pen. I don't happen to have a red pen. I happen to have an orange pen. So I want to mark my parallel lines with a single arrowhead on top of my line. So the lines have arrows. They're in blue in both directions, meaning that they're lines. And here's this line going, and this is the line crossing the 2 parallel lines. Typically, we call this, instead of the way your book does it, we typically call this line 1, line 2, and we call this line the cursive lowercase t for a transversal line. The transversal line is the line that crosses the 2 parallel lines. So we have 2 parallel lines like train tracks and a line crossing it like a road. And a lot of these angles then that are formed have very important properties. One is if you take some kind of a straight edge, you can see this line is straight, right? So we are always going to have 2 of these angles here add up to a straight line. That's half a circle. So if I take line 2 and angle 2 and angle 3, notice that together they make a semicircle. So 2 and 3, angle 2 plus angle 3, have to add up to 180 degrees. The measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3 have to add up to 180 degrees. Okay, now this line here, L1 and L2, these lines are parallel to each other. So the angle that's created right here, since this line is straight and this line is straight, and that line's parallel to that line, you can see parallel lines. Well, if this line is traveling in a straight line, then the angle created here has to be exactly the same as this angle right here. We call those corresponding. That's this right here, corresponding. So angle 2, you can see, and angle 6 right here. Okay, let's go back to this example again. Take a look here. So notice, these lines are parallel. So this angle is right here, angle 2, is exactly the same as that. It has to be. And the same thing is true here of angle 3. This line's traveling in a straight line. Well, this line's traveling exactly the same direction as this line. So this angle 7 has to be with angle 3. And you can see it down here. Corresponding. Corresponding means they're in a like location. Okay. Now, they have these words interior and exterior. This is probably the trickiest thing when we deal with geometry and this concept. You have to, the reason why you had to identify the two parallel lines is that you can find the two parallel lines, put your finger between them. That's the inside or the interior. So we want to label this the interior. And that'll create two different exteriors. We have an exterior on top and an exterior on the bottom. Now don't always look up and down, you know, like it's on the top and the bottom. Take a look at this crazy thing. Turn your book 90 degrees. Turn your book 90 degrees and take a look. Okay. Now finding the interior would be here in the middle and the exteriors on the left and the right. So don't assume that it has to be above and below. You have to find the two parallel lines first to find interior. Interior here, exterior. So you could just list all the exterior angles, 1 and 2, 8 and 7 for exterior, 1, 2, 8, 7. Interior, these are these 4 right here. You can see these 4. Okay, so when we talk about interior angles right here, and we're talking about these 4 guys, and now we're talking about alternate. Well, what do they mean by alternate? This word is very tricky. Alternate means alternate sides of the transversal. So let's take a little note here and put alternate sides of the transversal line. Okay. Now, we're not going to do some complicated proof right now, but if you take a look, we had our straight edge against that, making a straight line. Well, look what happens when you do this. If I put my straight edge there, I have another straight line. And so that makes a straight line with 2, but this also makes a straight line with 2. So that means that these two angles across from each other are congruent. And now these, and the same true would be true down here. Okay? So, sorry, that's a single mark. I apologize. This is your double mark. This is your single mark. Now let's take a look. So what we have here when we're dealing with alternate interior, here's the transversal line traveling along. On alternate sides of it, inside, alternate interior, 4 and 6 are congruent. the most complicated thing we're going to probably look at. Alternate inside, interior, alternate of the transversal are congruent. So 4 and 6 are congruent, and also 3 and 5 are congruent. What do we know about 2 and 3? They made a straight line. That has a single mark and a double mark. Notice on the same side of the inside, they're going to add up to 182. So they are supplementary. They don't note that here, but you need to write that down. Same side interior angles. So if they're on the same side of the transversal inside, they are supplementary. They add up to 100 supplementary. Sorry. I think I spelled that wrong. Let me go back to here. Supplementary. Okay. Well, you get the point. Special notation is used to indicate parallel and perpendicular and parallel lines. We use that red. You've seen this before. The red squarish thing here. If you see that, that means 90 degrees. That's a right angle. 90 degrees. The red arrowheads are essential. You have to use a color marker, and you would put it on the parallel lines. Okay, and then we use these symbols. Line M, that's what the M stands for, is perpendicular to line N. Line P is parallel to Q. Okay, and again, you can use this as a resource. Example 1. Now we just want to identify angles and angle relationships. We can look at classify each pair of angles in the figure as alternate interior. So we need to find the parallel lines. Okay, it's where there's 2 of them. This line and this line are parallel. So let's identify. You should always do this. Write down where the interior is. This is interior, and this is exterior, and this is exterior. By the way, these books are consumable, so you can write on them and take notes, which is super. And now they want to know alternate interior, alternate exterior. What does alternate mean? It means, put a T there. Here's the transversal line. If they're on other sides of the transversal, then they're alternate. So angle, and then corresponding means they're in similar location. Similar location. When I say that, I mean, okay, well, angle 1 here on this transversal is up and left, so it would match with angle 5, which is up and left. But you first got to identify these parallel lines, and then you can do that. Excuse me. Angle 1 and angle 7. Okay, angle 1 and angle 7. These are on the alternate side. Here's the transversal line. They're on alternate sides, but they're not interior. They're exterior. Alternate exterior angles. 2 and 6. They're both, 6 is on the interior, 2 is on the exterior, but they're both up and right. So that's going to be corresponding. Let's try this one over here. Before I even try the problem, what do I do first? I need to identify the parallel lines, which I do with a mark, arrowhead. The 2 lines parallel to each other. And then this is my transversal line. I'm going to call it T. I would call this line 1, line 2. And I need to classify this angle relationship based on what they gave us on the previous example. Let's find 4 and 6. Here's 4 and 6. Okay, I know this is the interior. This is exterior. This is exterior. So both these angles are interior. This whole area between the parallel lines is interior. So I have 4 and 6. Next, I need to determine, are they on the same side of the transversal or on alternate sides? Here's the transversal line. 4 is on the left of it, 6 is on the right. So that's an alternate interior angle. Further, what do I know about alternate interior angles from what I looked at on the other side? I know that they're actually congruent. So the measure of angle 4 is actually going to be congruent to the measure of angle 6. Let's find some missing angle measures. Okay, this is where the vocabulary that was missing we added in here about the supplementary relationships. If you have a protractor and you ever want to look at these angles, you can. So the way a protractor works is you are going to set the target right at a vertex and pick a line to be a 0. Okay, so let's do that again. So the angle is formed where the lines cross. So that's going to be my vertices on this angle. So I'm going to slide my protractor to the target right where the lines cross and the angle is formed. And 1, I'm going to see that's off. I need to pull it down and slide it right on there, making this 0. And then I could take a straight edge and I could find this angle. This angle is, looks like right here, 50 degrees. So this angle is actually 50 degrees. Oh, and look, there they've given us measure of angle 1 is 50 degrees. So you could slide your protractor around and measure those angles if you want. But we already know the angle relationships. What do we know about angle 1? We know it's 50 degrees. Okay? Well, don't we know 1 and 2 form a straight line, right? And so what is a straight line? Well, essentially it's the angle's half a circle, right? If I imagined a circle being 108, half a circle 180, so to complete this, they're supplementary. So this angle right here has to be 130. Okay, well, these two guys form a straight line too. What do we know about a straight line? It's half a circle. What does angle 3 have to be? It's got to be 50. We can do that all over the place, all over all 4 angles. Here's another straight line. This has to be 130. Okay. These are parallel lines, so the corresponding angles are forming the same. This line's crossing 2 lines that are going exactly in the same direction. So, and they're parallel. So this line crosses, it forms exactly the same angle. This has to be 130. Look, alternate interior angles are congruent. Interior. Alternate sides, they're congruent. So this is 50. It's also corresponding 1 and 5 because they're in similar locations. Okay. And so we go around again. 130. You're going to see this pattern a lot. One other thing that the book does not do in this section for some reason is talk about vertical angles. Vertical angles are the angles, when we look at 4 angles with 2 crossing lines, they're the ones that are opposite each other. Vertical. So vertical angles are opposite. And they're also congruent. So in this case, 1 and 3, measure of angle 1 is congruent to measure of angle 3. And you can do that with all of them. 2 and 4, 5 and 7, 8 and 6. Those are all vertical angles. You can also essentially close it off. It looks like a V and another V on the other side. So that's another way to, kind of a mnemonic device that you can use to essentially remember what a vertical angle is. Okay, we're almost done here. We can apply it here. We have our angle relationships. We want to identify interior, exterior. Now I'm going to just abbreviate it with EXT, INT, now that I got the hang of it. These lines are parallel right here, so I'm going to make a mark. I'm going to find my transversal line with a T, and I know all these angle relationships. Once I know one, I can know them all. 105, okay, well, how do I get to 180? Here's a straight line. What plus 105 is going to give me 180? Well, let's see. I'm going to do some simple math. 180 minus 105. I got to borrow here. That's 7, 10, 5, 7, 75 degrees. Some of you probably did it in your head. 75 degrees. Again, all those relationships. This is a straight line. This has to be 105. Straight line. This has to be 75. Corresponding. Well, 5 and 7 are corresponding. We got the parallel lines, right? Forming the same angle, 105. And then we just complete it like a little pattern, 105, 75. Anytime you have the parallel lines and the transversal, you just get two numbers and they repeat this pattern over and over and over and over again. So measurement of angle 4 here, but you have to justify. So they gave us angle 2 right here at 105, and they asked for 104. I mean, angle 4. We've already found it. It's 105 degrees, but we need to justify our reason. And our reason is that they are both in the down and left. So that's under our list over here. That's a corresponding angle. So let's write that down. Corresponding. And that's about it. Sometimes, though, they will throw in something to throw you off. Again, they've added a second line in here, but don't get freaked out. It's not, let me zoom in a little bit so we can look at this. Dissect and approach it the way that I introduced it. So find the parallel lines. M and N are the parallel lines. So always mark those first with a red marker. We have a transversal. We have two of them. We have transversal 1 and transversal 2. Okay, so try not to get confused. With this line coming in, it's kind of messing up, and it's making some relationships weird. Okay, but you can still see 3 and 9 are alternate interior. We have all these relationships here. These are still forming straight lines. 10 and 9 are supplementary. 1 and 2, so they're going to add up to 180. These two are going to add up to 180. These two. Now you introduce this 90-degree angle right here at 8. So now you have 3 angles that are going to add up to 180. This angle, and that angle. Same thing here. These 3 will add up to 180, or these 3. So let's look at what they give us. We have in the figure line M is parallel. Okay, we got that. And line Q is perpendicular. So we got this Q and T are they cross. They make a 90-degree angle. And they give you one measure angle 1. So we could probably figure everything out here. Let's just do it. This is 40 degrees, and we know that that's going to be a straight line. So this is a 140. This is a straight line too. So this is 140. That makes this angle right here. I'm just going to kind of shoot it out. 40 degrees. Okay. So this is 40. That makes 3. This angle right here is 40 degrees. And this angle is 90 degrees. And the 3 of them together have to add up to 180. So 90 and 40 is 130. Okay, so the remainder here to make this straight is going to be 50 degrees. So there you go. Because 50 and 130 is 180. So this angle has to be 50 degrees. And then we could find the rest of them. You could look on this drawing. This is a vertical angle. So angle 5 is 90. 7 and 4 are vertical. So that's got to be 50. And this angle 3 is 40 degrees. So this is 40. You could always check by just closing it off and adding them up. 40, 50, and 90 is 180. 40, 50, and 90 is 180. And so you can read the reasoning here, but we've done the reasoning out in our thought process. Okay, your independent practice, your periods 2 and 3 are going to do pages, homework, pages 375 to 376, number 1 through 12. That's for periods 2 and 3. And then number 1 through 9 for periods 4, 5, and 6. Due on Friday. Okay. You also have one other assignment that is also going to be due, and it is your chapter review, page 441. It's a vocabulary. It's going to be really fun. It's got a search in it and some other things. So additionally, I'll move this back. Additional homework. And this will be due later, I believe. Now I've lost the page. Page 441, number 1 through 10. You do at the end of unit. Which will be the week after this, the week after you've watched this video. Okay. Good luck. I'll be back Thursday. If you have any questions,